Okay, so throughout this semester, we are going to get to know your camera. It is very important that an artist understands their materials. And in your case, it is the camera and the software. So understanding what all the settings mean on your camera is very important that you learn, and maybe the reason why you're taking the class. Over the next 3 weeks, we are going to be getting to know your camera. All right, we will work our way through this, so don't panic. I know the worksheets look too detailed, and really they're just meant to help you out. Okay, so we will get started. Now, for this class, it really doesn't matter what type of camera you have. You may have a very nice DSLR full frame camera, or you may have a less expensive point and shoot or automatic camera. Either one is fine, and really it doesn't matter. You can learn to take good pictures with any camera. The hybrids and the DSLR just have more options, but that doesn't mean you can't take brilliant pictures with a point and shoot. And really, you know, I understand. I use all different kinds of cameras. The one thing you cannot rely on is just the use of your cell phone. Now, if you do not have a camera, we do sell some kits at the bookstore. You can check them out there. I'm not exactly sure what models we have at the moment. You can also look on eBay and things like that. The main thing, you don't want to buy a camera that's less than like 12 megapixels. The newer cameras right now are like 18, 16, 24, so you don't want to get one that's too old, basically. So look for about 12 megapixels. Okay, test it out. If you're buying it from a pawn shop or from an individual, have them take a video of the pictures, or them shooting the camera, or something that you can guarantee that it works. Now, the type of camera you get and how expensive your camera is depends on your sensor. It is the memory in your camera. It records information, and it's built up of pixels. And pixels are little building blocks that record color and brightness. They don't understand, if you're photographing a car, they don't understand car, but they understand color and brightness. So the more pixels you have on your sensor, the better quality, more detail, the sharper, the larger you can print, all high quality stuff. That your money is going into the sensor. And unfortunately, size does matter in photography. So the size of your sensor, the larger, the better. The smaller, just it's less quality. Doesn't mean you can't still take good pictures. It just means you may not be able to print them as large as you want. Okay, so that's told by how many millions of pixels are going in your sensor, or horizontally and vertically in your sensor. Okay, the full frame sensors are comparable to 35 millimeter film, and that's kind of the newest scale. Again, don't worry too much. If you just stay above 12 megapixels, you'll be fine, and we don't have to concentrate on this too much. Now, on your worksheet, I'm asking you what brand of camera it is. What are the numbers? It's just good to know that information. Are the lenses exchangeable, or do you have a fixed lens? If you buy a DSLR, you can attach many different types of lenses to that camera body, and sometimes the kits don't come with the best lens. They come with an average lens, so you may need to get a bigger zoom or a wider angle or whatever. But if you have a DSLR, the best thing about that is you can interchange them. Now, most lenses nowadays have optical zoom. And zoom is when you move closer into a subject matter. Optical is very good. Optical maintains the focus quality. It is the higher end of the quality thing. Digital zoom all it does is it just makes your pixels bigger. So it looks like it's blowing it up, but as you can see here on the image on the right, it's very out of focus. And so the digital zoom is kind of faking a zoom. Optical zoom is the real zoom. And that's mainly the difference. So sometimes if you're buying a camera, it may advertise like 9 times digital zoom. You don't really care about that because it's not going to make your images look any better. You're looking at the optical zoom, so check that out. Now, one thing, all camera images that when you take, unless otherwise specified, are JPEGs. If you are a fan of Instagram, all those images are JPEGs. A JPEG file does not need any special software to open a photograph. It's formatted to work on many different devices and many different programs. It's just kind of a universal setting and works on websites and different things like that. It is a small file. Your camera always has a JPEG option, and some of the older cameras or more simple cameras will only have the JPEG option. Most DSLRs have a RAW format. It may be annotated by NEF or some other initials depending upon if it's a Nikon or a Canon. Sometimes it just says RAW. And why RAW was invented is because photographers wanted better quality. They wanted an uncompressed, unmodified digital file. So the camera manufacturers, when digital photography was just getting started, decided to create a unprocessed. Now, it's still using a computer chip to process the image. So, but it's the least manipulated by your camera. It's also a very big file. So if you look at your file formats, if you go in through your camera, go to menu, and you can search through on the camera option, usually it's just a little thumbnail of the camera, you can see your file formats and see what options you have. There are options where you can just choose JPEG or RAW, and then there's an option where you can choose a JPEG plus a RAW. So here's the thing, really it's kind of up to you. If you shoot a RAW file, you have to have a software that will process the RAW file. And the Creative Suite does have that embedded in the Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud Creative Suite has the processor embedded in. If it doesn't automatically come up, you might have to have kind of a plugin for it, because you need to process it before it will work in Photoshop. Now, some people just use the raw processor and then call it a day, but we still need to do some things to the image. So I like to process it and then bring it into Photoshop. Okay, so down below RAW we see PSD. Now this is a file format that once you start working in Photoshop with an image, depending upon what actions you're taking within the software may change your file from a JPEG to a PSD. Now when we go to save as, we always want to save it back to a JPEG, because you can't open up a PSD file on any computer or any phone. You have to have the software in order to view the image. So it's also non-compressed. It's a big file. It's a good quality file, and I'll explain more about Photoshop coming up, but these are file formats that you may come across. TIFF and GIF are different kinds of file formats. Most of these are not listed in your camera. Instead, they're listed in the software how you want to save them. So sometimes printers want a TIFF file. Sometimes people doing web design want a GIF. If you're a photographer for somebody else, they'll usually tell you what they want, what kind of file they need. If it's a JPEG, if it's a whatever it is, and ask them if you're doing a favor for a friend, what kind of file do you need. Also, in your menu, under the camera shooting menu, you may also need to set your image quality and your image size. Now, what we're looking at right now is the back of a Nikon. Every camera is a little bit different. Sometimes you only have one of these options. It may be your image size may also be under your image quality. And what this details is how big of a file you want to set your camera to. My advice is always that you shoot at the highest quality and the finest, sometimes the super finest quality, and use the software to then change it if you're just uploading it to your website or Instagram or whatever it is you're doing. But you can't add information in. So if you shoot a photograph at a small or lower quality, you may never be able to print it because it's not saved at a size that is able to be printed. The main dimensions you need to know is that for the internet, they want images, or images that load very easily, are 72 pixels per inch. But if you're going to print something, it needs to be 300 pixels per inch. So, just take my advice, always shoot at the highest quality. So this is kind of the Nikon back. And with the JPEG, you can pick between, small, medium, and large, or sometimes it just says the numbers, that how many pixels are going across the height and width. Just always choose the largest option. And you can refer to your menu, your manual rather. This is a Canon background. And so here we're seeing both the size and the quality at the same time. So you can see LMS, then we see RAW plus JPEG, which is the large file. So if you look to the left of the letters, we either see like a smooth arch or kind of a stepping stone, kind of weird thing. The stepping stone is representing the pixels, so we don't want that. We always want to choose the smoother arch. Okay, so and in this camera in particular, it's showing you how big the file is. For a medium file, that's 8 megapixels, which you can only really print an 8 by 10-ish size with an 8 megapixels. So I assume the large is probably 12, and you can print, closer to 11 by 14 with that camera. Okay, so you want to set your file at the best quality that you have. That's always recommended. The next thing we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about these again vastly through the next 3 weeks. So for this week's assignment, you are photographing the scavenger hunt, which again is that list of 15 photographs I want you to take. But you're also doing the first 2 pages of your getting to know your digital camera worksheet. And I've uploaded just the general one. There's a Nikon version and a Canon version that I tried to do specific to the functions and the placement of things, but this is just a general one. So, answer these questions. The name of your camera, I really mean the brand of your camera, things like that. Then below that section is the image size and quality, which we were just talking about. I feel like if you write them down, you're more likely to remember these options that you have. And this is not more complicated than it sounds. It's kind of tedious, I will admit, but it's not very complicated. So just, write down the answers. On the following page, I want you to experiment photographing with the various options your camera offers you. And I wouldn't preview these on your camera because it's that little screen. Even though if you may have a big screen, you're not going to tell until you can look at them on your computer. So just go through, you can photograph the same subject and you're shooting at auto or program for this first part, but I want you to just go through and see how many options that you have to take the pictures. And then just write stuff down. The blank space is really for you to put notes on. You will be turning these in, but you'll be photographing them or scanning them and then emailing them to me. But the blank space is just for you to take notes. And most of the time I'm giving you extra spaces, like you may not have 10 options, you know, so just in case you mess up or something, there's extra space there. So the subject matter you're looking for this week is varied. This is an assignment that's teaching you how to see possibilities and what can be a good photograph. Now, this is also to kind of see how to train your eye, if you will, to look for different things to turn into a photograph. You do not have to shoot these in order. I would possibly print this out, maybe put it in your pocket, grab your camera and go walk around a couple blocks and look for things to photograph that are on this list. This is an exercise. It's getting you warmed up, so to speak, in what could possibly turn into a good subject. You never know until you try, and I don't want you to overthink it. I want you to have fun with this and see what you come up with. So there's 15 items. You know, your first contact sheet that you turn in will have 15 photographs. If you don't have a total of 15 of these, then points will be taken off, unfortunately. So try to get each one of these done. The photographs that I'm showing you at the bottom of this worksheet are of a Spanish designer, Gaudi, or architect Gaudi. And so this is the same building photographed 3 different times, and it just shows you how one subject, depending upon how you select or what you select to shoot, can turn into 3 or 4 different images. One thing that photographers do is we take pictures. So we have to take a lot of pictures to find the best one. Okay, so again, this is what you're looking for. This is your subject matter. It's on this list. Okay, please at least shoot these 15. Now you can take many different textures, as what number 1 says, find interesting textures. You can take all different kinds of textures and in the end pick the best one, but at least get each one of these 15 shot. It's up to you to interpret those photographs however you want. For this week, I want you to be shooting on P. This is the main dial. It's on top of your camera if you're looking down on top of it. And we have different kinds of options. The P means program. It's a very automatic program. If you have it on here, every picture you take will be a good exposure. A is aperture priority. S is shutter speed priority. And then M is fully manual. Okay, and we'll get through these in the next few weeks. Also on here you have some auto, which is kind of the same as P. So you could really shoot on auto or P. It's basically the same thing. And then we have some preset symbols. You know, the close-up of the woman is a portrait setting, so that is good for people that are like 8 to 10 feet away from you. There's the mountainscape, which is for photographing at large distances, everything being in focus, and so on and so forth. But for this first week, I would like for you to be shooting on P or auto. Okay, and here basically I explain what the P means. Depending on your camera, you may have AV or TV. Those are kind of older symbols. It kind of depends on how old your camera is and how they're annotating these. Okay, so we will stop here.